Greetings, it's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt, and this is video number 8 of our Mergers and Acquisitions video series. Now, a company wants faster growth, new technology, or access to new markets. Its leaders usually face 3 choices: build the capability internally, buy another company, or partner with someone who already has what they need. The decision may look strategic, but it also has a governance decision to make. Who challenges the assumptions? Who decides how much risk is acceptable? Who speaks up when the price becomes too high? And after the deal closes, who makes sure the promised value is actually delivered? In this session, we'll examine how corporate governance shapes mergers and acquisitions, how acquisitions can hide poor performance, and when a joint venture or strategic alliance may create more value than buying another company. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain the connection between mergers and acquisitions and corporate governance, recognize situations in which deal activity may conceal weak governance, and recommend when a joint venture is a stronger strategic choice. So let's talk about governance and the control system behind a deal. Corporate governance is a system through which a corporation is directed, challenged, and held accountable. In a major transaction, governance determines who receives information, who questions the deal, how conflicts are managed, and whether leaders remain accountable after the transaction is completed. Management develops strategy and recommends transactions. The board of directors does not need to negotiate every operating detail, but it must challenge the strategic logic, valuation, financing risks, and alternatives. One of the most important questions a board can ask is not simply, is this an attractive company? The better question is buying this company the best use of our capital compared with building the capability ourselves, forming a partnership, returning cash to shareholders, or investing in the existing business? Good governance separates enthusiasm from evidence. It creates clear decision points, requires difficult questions, and prevents transaction momentum from turning an interest idea into an irreversible commitment. Now, here's what boards should examine before and after an acquisition. Before approving the deal, the board should understand why the transaction is necessary, what alternatives were considered, and how the price was established, and what could cause the investment to fail. Directors should challenge projected cost savings, revenue growth, financing assumptions, regulatory risks, cultural fit, technological compatibility, and the organization's ability to integrate the target. They should also examine incentives. An executive may support an acquisition because it increases the size of the company, personal influence, compensation, or job security. Advisors may receive most of their compensation only if the deal closes. But these conflicts do not automatically make a transaction improper, but they must be disclosed and managed. Due diligence is central to this process. It should not be treated as a checklist used to support a decision that has already been made. It is disciplined effort to test whether the deal thesis is still valid. A useful diligence process asks, what evidence could change the price? What fact could stop the transaction? What risks has not been quantified? And what will the integration team inherit after closing? The most valuable diligence finding may be the one that causes the company to walk away. Here's how acquisitions can hide weak governance. Acquisitions create value, but they can also make weak performance harder to see. A company with declining internal growth may buy several smaller companies and report strong total revenue growth. The headline numbers may improve even when though the original business continues to weaken. Leaders may repeatedly describe integration costs as temporary, change the way business segments are reported, or emphasize adjusted earnings that exclude recurring expenses. Goodwill and other accounting measures may also delay recognition that the company overpaid. This is why boards and investors should separate organic growth from acquired growth. They should compare realized returns with original investment case, track integration costs, and evaluate whether the company is creating value per share rather than simply becoming larger. Growth is not the same as value creation. A common warning sign is empire building. This occurs when leaders pursue acquisitions, size, status, prestige, or influence instead of adequate risk adjustment returns. Another warning sign is serial acquisition. Buying many companies can create scale, but it can also produce incompatible systems, weak controls, exhausted managers, unresolved cultural problems, and growing integration debt. When deal volume rises while integration quality falls, governance has failed to keep pace with ambition. Let's talk about the internal deal team and what they must do, including with people who live with the decision. A strong acquisition team is cross-functional. Finance evaluates value and funding. Legal specialists review obligations and structure. Operations leaders test whether projected improvements can actually be delivered. Technology leaders examine systems, data, and cybersecurity. Human resource leaders evaluate talent, labor issues, leadership, and culture. Integration leaders should be involved through the agreement, though the agreement is signed, not introduced after the deal closes. The people who will inherit the consequences need a voice in the decision. Organizations also benefit from using decision gates. Leaders can improve strategic fit first, then preliminary valuation, detailed diligence, final price, closing readiness, and later post-closing review. The gates reduce confirmation bias and create opportunities to stop, delay, or redesign the transaction before too much money and reputation have been committed. So, whether or not to buy, build, or partner, not every strategic need requires an acquisition. A company may build a capacity internally when it has time, knowledge, and a strong need to retain control. It may buy a company when speed and full ownership are essential. It may partner when the required capabilities are divided between organizations and complete ownership is unnecessary, unavailable, or too risky. A useful principle is to choose the least irreversible structure that still provides enough control to create value. An acquisition requires substantial capital and creates significant integration risk. A partnership may allow both organizations to share costs, risk, knowledge, technology, distribution, or market access while remaining separate. This is where joint ventures and strategic alliances become important. So let's talk about joint ventures and strategic alliances. A joint venture usually involves a shared business, often through a jointly owned legal entity. A strategic alliance is usually a contractual relationship in which independent organizations cooperate in selected activities without creating a fully shared company. The label matters less than the actual design. Leaders must decide how control, economics, assets, obligation, information, and risk will be divided. A joint venture is most compelling when each partner contributes something necessary to difficult to produce. One organization might contribute technology and global brand recognition. The other might contribute local market knowledge, regulatory experience, manufacturing capacity, or distribution relationships. The partnership creates value because neither organization could achieve the same result as effectively alone. Starbucks and Tata provide a useful example. Starbucks brought its brand and retail model into India, while Tata contributed local knowledge, sourcing relationships, and institutional credibility. The value came from combining global capability and location-specific advantage. Here's why partnerships fail. Partnerships often begin with optimism, but optimism is not a governance system. Joint ventures and alliances fail when goals drift apart, contributions become unequal, decision rights are unclear, or one partner learns what it needs and becomes less committed. A partnership can also become paralyzed when too many decisions require unanimous approval. Yet if one partner has too much authority, the other may feel exposed or ignored. Good governance must balance action with protection. Partners should agree in advance on the purpose of the venture, board representation, budgets, leadership appointments, major investments, intellectual property, information rights, performance measures, conflict resolution, and exit. Exit planning is not evidence of distrust. It's a recognition that markets, strategies, ownership, leadership, and relationships change. The agreement should explain what happens if the partnership succeeds, struggles, reaches a deadlock, or ends. Here's a practical framework for managers. Before recommending an acquisition, joint venture, or strategic alliance, managers should answer 5 questions. First, what strategic problem are we trying to solve? Second, why can we not solve it effectively through internal development? Third, do we truly need full ownership, or would a partnership provide enough control? Fourth, what does each party contribute and how will the combined contribution create value? Fifth, how will authority, risk, performance, intellectual property, conflict, and exit be governed? A strong recommendation should not begin with a preferred transaction. It should begin with a strategic problem and compare realistic alternatives. So let's review. The central lesson is that ownership structures should follow strategic need. Corporate governance turns ambition into accountable action. It ensures that leaders receive complete information, challenge price and risk, manage conflicts, and learn from results. A capable acquisition organization is not measured only by the number of deals it completes. It's measured by the quality of its decisions, including the discipline to walk away from a weak transaction. Joint ventures and strategic alliances expand the manager's options. They can provide market access, learning, technology, and shared risk without requiring a full acquisition. But they succeed only when partners create genuine combined value and establish practical governance. The best structure is the one that provides enough control to create value while preserving flexibility, incentives, and accountability. If this lesson has helped you think more carefully about acquisitions, partnerships, and corporate governance, please subscribe to the channel. This is a part of my acquisitions and mergers series where we connect financial decisions with the leadership and management practices that determine whether transactions succeed. In the next lesson, we'll continue examining how leaders evaluate and manage major strategic transactions. Thank you for watching, and I hope you'll join me in the next lesson. And even more importantly, I hope that you have a great day, because only you get to choose how you feel about it. I'm Dr. Paul Gerhardt.